Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. And today we're going deep on Elon Musk using Walter Isaacson's biography as our guide. Now, we all know the headlines, the tweets, let's just say, interesting life choices, but we're going deeper. What made him who he is, what experiences shaped him, the triumphs, the failures, those controversies, it's all on the table.
It really is remarkable. We're not just talking about your average tech CEO here, right? Musk seems to operate on a whole other level, always pushing boundaries, breaking the mold, aiming for things most people wouldn't even dream of.
Absolutely. And it all seemed to go back to this, well, pretty intense childhood in South Africa. Isaacson doesn't sugarcoat it, bullying, abuse, a real trial by fire kind of upbringing. Do you think that explains, at least in part, his almost superhuman risk tolerance?
It's definitely a key part of the puzzle. Isaacson talks about this incredible resilience Musk developed, this high pain threshold, like almost nothing phases him. There's even this wild story about survival camp counselors recounting deaths to the kids as a warning against showing weakness.
No kidding. Wow. So almost like he was, I don't know, conditioned to face down fear and discomfort from a young age.
Exactly. This drive, this constant need to push the limits. It might be rooted in those early experiences. It's like his baseline for normal is completely different.
It's fascinating, though, because amidst all that hardship, you see this young Musk escaping into the world of science fiction. Isaacson highlights The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Foundation series as major influences. Was that just pure escapism or something more?
I think those books really provided a framework for how he views the world. They tackle these huge existential questions. Humanity's potential, technology, our place in the universe. It wasn't just entertainment. It was planting seeds for those big, ambitious ideas that drive him.
And even as a kid, he's not just reading about those ideas, he's putting them into action.
Yeah.
Remember the story about him coding a roulette simulation to prove to his dad that his gambling schemes were flawed?
Oh, yeah, classic Elon. Even then, you see this sharp analytical mind, this desire to challenge assumptions, even his own father's, and find the underlying truth, the underlying mechanics of how things work. He doesn't take anything at face value.
And that entrepreneurial spirit was bubbling up early, too. A video game arcade idea, even creating and selling his own game at, 12 years old?
It's more than just a cute kid story, though, right? It's a blueprint for his whole approach. He sees a system, in this case video games, finds it inefficient, and builds his own solution. And we see that over and over, whether it's online payments, space travel, you name it.
It's that there's got to be a better way mentality.
Exactly.
And speaking of bold moves, there's that story about him taking off to Canada at 17, alone, sleeping on his backpack in a hostel because he was afraid of getting robbed.
That says a lot about his independence, his risk tolerance. He's not afraid to be uncomfortable, to really put himself out there in pursuit of his goals, even if it means facing some danger.
Fearless, it seems, from day one. And even getting into university, it wasn't exactly a straightforward path. He starts at Queen's, but then gets bored and transfers to UPenn, even with financial challenges. He wasn't settling for a mediocre experience.
It's that restlessness again, always pushing for something more challenging.
Yeah.
He craves those intellectually stimulating environments. That's where he thrives.
And it's kind of crazy how some of his early internships almost foreshadow what he'd end up doing later on, like that one at a company developing supercapacitors for electric vehicles.
It's like planting the seeds for these future obsessions. He gets exposed to these cutting-edge technologies, sees those emerging industries, and it's almost like he's absorbing it all, taking mental notes.
And then Zip2, his first real company, online city guides for newspapers. Isaacson makes it clear the guy was a workaholic, sleeping under his desk, pulling all-nighters. But was it just pure grit, or was there also real strategy behind it all?
Well, a bit of both, I'd say. That drive to succeed was definitely there, but he also knew how to play the game. Remember the machine that goes ping? That fake server he concocted to wow investors?
Oh yeah, pure Elon, right. Always thinking a few steps ahead.
Always.
And that sale, over $300 million, that gave him the capital to really start thinking big.
That's not just about the money, though. It's the validation. He took an idea, built it from scratch, disrupted an entire industry, and it paid off. Huge confidence booster.
So that leads us to, I guess, what you might call the PayPal years, X.com, his own online financial services company, which then merges with Confinity. But this is where things get, well, kind of messy, don't they?
Yeah, this is where we start to see the friction that happens when Elon isn't 100% in control. That clash with Peter Thiel, ultimately leading to him being ousted as CEO, it's a pattern we see play out again and again. He has this very specific vision, and compromise isn't really his strong suit.
And the whole thing plays out while he's battling a near-fatal case of malaria. The irony.
Right. Almost unbelievable. And then, of course, you've got the PayPal mafia, including Thiel himself, who end up being key investors in Musk's future companies. It's wild.
Talk about burying the hatchet. Do you think that's something he learned, maybe, from those tough early years? To compartmentalize?
It's definitely possible. Maybe those early experiences forced him to adapt, be resilient, and to play the long game.
Okay, so from near-death experiences to literally shooting for the stars, let's talk SpaceX. His lifelong obsession with space finally becomes reality.
This is where things get really exciting. This isn't just about building rockets. It's about colonizing Mars, ensuring humanity's survival. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we even think is possible.
It's truly next-level thinking, and Isaacson describes how Musk approaches all this with first principles thinking. When it comes to rocket science, what does that even mean?
In simple terms, it's about stripping away assumptions, breaking down a problem to its core elements. So instead of just accepting the insane cost of rockets, he analyzes the raw materials, the manufacturing process, and realizes basically that there's a huge idiot index baked into the price.
So he's not just building rockets, he's questioning the entire way the industry operates.
Exactly. He's challenging every convention, every established practice, finding ways to do things cheaper, faster, better. It's a completely disruptive approach.
And of course, those early days were brutal. 3 Falcon 1 launches ending in explosions. That had to be a huge blow.
It was definitely a setback. But it also showcases a critical element of his leadership learning from failure. He doesn't let those setbacks define him. He uses them as fuel to push harder.
He's got this incredible team, too. Tom Mueller, Gwynne Shotwell, Hans Koenigsmann. These are legends in their own right.
Right. It's not just about their brilliance as engineers. They all buy into Musk's vision, his level of risk tolerance, that relentless drive.
Isaacson uses this phrase, maniacal sense of urgency, to describe the culture at SpaceX. Sounds a bit intense.
It definitely is. Musk sets crazy deadlines, pushes everyone to their absolute limits, and it creates this culture of constant innovation, rapid iteration. Not for everyone, but it clearly gets results.
There's a funny anecdote about that first Falcon 1 failure. Musk tells his team they'll now have 11 items on the risk list, never 10, because they forgot to consider the fuel sloshing in the tanks.
Yeah, you see that obsessive attention to detail. He's not overlooking any potential flaw, no matter how small.
And then, boom, SpaceX becomes the first private company to launch a spacecraft into orbit and dock with the International Space Station. It's a historic achievement.
It really is. And not just for SpaceX. It changes the whole game for space exploration. Shows that private companies can compete with government agencies. It opened up a whole new era.
And of course, you can't talk about SpaceX without mentioning the whole rivalry with Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin.
Musk sees that focus on suborbital tourism as a distraction, a sideshow compared to his goals of true space exploration and colonization. Joyrides aren't really his thing.
Okay, let's shift gears to Tesla and the whole electric revolution, another area where Musk saw the future and went all in.
This is where a lot of his passions converge: technology, sustainability, pushing the limits of what's possible in engineering and design. He envisions this world where electric cars aren't just practical, they're desirable. And he makes it happen.
And he dives right in, investing heavily in Tesla Motors, ultimately becoming CEO. There's also this thing about vertical integration that he champions, which I'll admit I don't fully grasp. Can you break that down?
Basically, he didn't want to just assemble cars from parts made by others. He wanted control over the entire process, from the battery cells to the final assembly. Complete control over quality, innovation, costs. Bold move, but that's Tesla in a nutshell.
It's classic Elon, wanting to do it all. And he's got his own ideas about how to do things, right? Those early clashes with co-founder Martin Eberhard about their strategy. Musk wants to start with a high-priced sports car. Eberhard favors a more affordable model.
Two very different philosophies. Musk believed that creating a desirable, aspirational product was crucial to establishing the brand, and he wasn't afraid to go against conventional wisdom, and he was right. The Roadster changed everything.
And you can't forget about Musk's, shall we say, micromanaging tendencies. Isaacson tells this hilarious story about him taking over the planning of a Tesla event, obsessed with the catering costs and even the napkin designs.
That's our Elon. He sees every detail and he wants it done his way, no matter how small. Might be frustrating to work with, but it's also a part of why he gets things done. No settling for mediocrity, even when it comes to napkins.
But it wasn't all sunshine and roses at Tesla, was it? Those early days were full of production delays, cost overruns, that whole battle with Eberhard that ultimately led to his exit.
It was an existential struggle. Musk was pouring his own money into Tesla, even mortgaging his house, just to keep the company alive. He was all in.
But he built another incredible team, right? J.B. Straubel, Frenzon Holzhausen, these are seriously talented people.
They were willing to challenge him, but they also saw his genius, that unwavering belief in what they were creating. They went through hell with him to get it done.
And Musk obsesses over the user experience, insists on those sleek, minimalist interiors, those cool, retractable door handles. He wants a Tesla to feel like a spaceship.
It's all about the experience, not just the car itself. He wants to transform the way people think about electric vehicles, make them cool, desirable, even futuristic.
But that intensity, that drive, it comes at a cost. Isaacson talks about Musk's management style at Tesla, demanding, often micromanaging, high employee turnover.
It's a recurring theme for sure. Musk's style is intense and definitely not for everyone. But those who can handle it, they share his work ethic, his willingness to push those boundaries, and that tolerance for a little bit of chaos.
There's that story about him ordering the removal of those legally mandated warning labels on the sun visors. Says people aren't stupid and the stickers are. Risky move, wouldn't you say?
It is. Shows his disdain for red tape and his absolute confidence in his judgment. Sometimes that confidence borders on arrogance, but it's also a key part of his success. He's not afraid to challenge the rules, even when they seem untouchable.
And then there's the infamous production hell of 2017-2018. Musk is literally sleeping on the factory floor, driving his team to hit those ambitious Model 3 production targets. Sounds brutal.
It was. Tested not only his leadership, but the entire team's resilience. But they came out of it stronger, refined their production process. It was like they had climbed a mountain together.
Isaacson actually goes into detail about this 10-point production algorithm they developed, questioning every requirement, deleting unnecessary steps, simplifying designs. It's fascinating.
A perfect example of Musk's engineering mind in action. Always finding efficiencies, challenging the status quo. And those lessons, they weren't just for Tesla. They carried over to his other ventures, too.
So we've got the early years, the businesses, the work ethic, but there's a whole other side to this guy, isn't there? A more personal side, a more human side that we've got to explore.
Absolutely. You can't really understand Elon Musk without delving into his personal life, his relationships, the things that shaped him on a deeper level.
Sounds like a great place to pick up next time.
I agree.
All right, so last time we were talking about getting into the more personal side of Elon Musk. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the rockets and the cars and all that, but there's a whole other dimension to this guy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've touched on his drive, his ambition, but to really grasp who Elon Musk is, we have to go beyond just the business ventures, the headlines. And Isaacson, he does a great job of that, really digging into his personal life, the relationships, all the complexity that come with being, well, Elon Musk.
I mean, the guy's had multiple marriages, relationships with some pretty incredible women, Justine Musk, Khalil Riley, Grimes. Seems like a lot to juggle, even for, a superhuman like Elon.
Yeah, that work-life balance thing, huh? Doesn't seem to be his forte. Isaacson shares some pretty revealing stories, like Musk admitting that he told Justine, during an argument no less, that if she were his employee, he'd fire her.
Yikes.
Oof. That's not exactly what you want to hear from your partner. Do you think that's, I don't know, a reflection of his leadership style seeping into his personal life? Or is it something deeper?
It's a pattern for sure. That need for control, the difficulty with compromise, it pops up again and again, both personally and professionally. It's definitely a theme.
Isaacson also talks about Musk's struggles with intimacy, the whole connecting with people on an emotional level thing.
Yeah.
I think that maybe goes back to his childhood, all those early traumas.
It's certainly possible. I mean, those early experiences, the bullying, the isolation, they likely had a huge impact on how he sees the world, how he forms relationships. Maybe he seeks solace in those big challenges, those huge missions, almost as a way to avoid those messy human emotions.
Like he's more at ease with algorithms than feelings. Maybe. And then there's, of course, all the controversy. The Twitter outbursts, attacks on critics, those clashes with regulators. It's like he can't help but stir the pot.
Right. Just this impulse to say whatever's on his mind, consequences be damned. Like calling that British cave diver a pedo guy, ending up in a defamation lawsuit, or smoking weed on Joe Rogan's podcast and watching Tesla stock plummet.
It's easy to write it off as like, oh, that's just Elon being Elon. But those incidents, they raise serious questions about his judgment, Like, does he even understand the impact of his words, his actions? He's so used to being in control, surrounded by yes men, that he forgets the real world doesn't work that way.
There are these moments of vulnerability too, though. Isaacson describes that interview with the New York Times. Musk breaks down, crying, describes 2018 as the most painful year of his career.
We forget sometimes, right? Even someone like Musk, with all that drive and resilience, he's still human, still feels those pressures, the emotional toll. He's not some robot. He's got feelings, even if he's not always great at showing them.
It's a reminder that there's a lot more going on beneath the surface than we might realize.
Yeah, it's all part of this complex picture.
And speaking of complexity, there's the sheer range of his interests, all those other ventures. The Boring Company, Neuralink, OpenAI. It's like he sees a problem, any problem, and thinks, challenge accepted. Doesn't matter what field it is.
He's like a real-life Tony Stark, minus the Iron Man suit, maybe. That Boring Company story is pure Elon. Stuck in traffic, tweets, "Traffic is driving me nuts. I'm going to build a tunnel boring machine and just start digging." And bam, another company is born.
It's that impulsivity, that belief that he can solve anything no matter what. And then there's Neuralink, this crazy idea to connect human brains directly to computers.
He's taking his whole AI fascination to a whole other level, wants to enhance human capabilities, but also recognizes the risks. It's like literally merging man and machine.
Terrifying and exciting at the same time. Right. And it's interesting how his politics have evolved. He was an Obama guy, now he's railing against woke Democrats, calls himself a free speech absolutist.
Yeah, you see this disillusionment with what he sees as the excesses of the left. More aligned now with libertarian ideas, individual liberty, limited government. He's always going to challenge the status quo, even when it comes to his own beliefs.
Isaacson goes into his relationship with his father, too, Errol. Pretty complicated, even cuts off financial support after learning about a child Errol had with his stepdaughter. Tough stuff.
Gives you a glimpse into those family dynamics, the scars from those early years. Maybe a struggle to reconcile with the past, who knows? It's a reminder that even the most successful people, they're still shaped by their families, those early relationships.
And of course, we can't forget about the whole Twitter saga. Buying it, saying he wants to make it a bastion of free speech, then all the changes, the controversies, it's been a whirlwind.
Maybe the most polarizing thing he's done, right? His approach to content moderation, letting those banned accounts back on, his own tweets, all of it. It sparked a huge debate about free speech, the role of social media in our lives. It's a big deal.
Like he bought a giant megaphone and just started shouting out whatever popped into his head.
Yeah, not afraid to speak his mind, that's for sure. And he seems to kind of enjoy the chaos that follows. But I think he genuinely believes in free speech, even if his methods are, well, a little rough around the edges.
It's been a wild ride, to say the least, from those crazy early years to the global stage he's on now, always pushing boundaries, for better or for worse.
And that's why he fascinates us, right?
Yeah.
He embodies the contradictions of our time.
Right.
Brilliant, driven, visionary, but also impulsive, reckless, sometimes insensitive. He makes us think, makes us question.
So how do we even begin to sum this guy up? What's the takeaway from all this?
Well, it's safe to say he's not your average dude. His drive, his ambition, that ability to see and go after those impossible goals, it's incredible. But it comes at a price to himself, to those around him. He pushes everyone, himself included, to the limit, and doesn't mind breaking a few things along the way.
Not exactly the touchy-feely type, you know?
Right, definitely not.
So someone listening might be thinking, okay, brilliant guy, but maybe also kind of a jerk. How do we square those two things?
That's the big question, isn't it? And honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer. We can acknowledge his achievements, his impact on the world, and still say, yeah, his methods aren't always great, and his pursuit of progress sometimes hurts people.
Yeah.
It's messy. There's no easy answer.
It's like that saying, never meet your heroes, except in this case, we're getting this very intimate look into the mind of one of the most influential people alive.
And that's what makes this biography so powerful. It's not just a success story. It's about human nature, ambition, drive, that constant battle between our best and worst impulses.
So as we wrap up, what's the one question, the big thought you want to leave our listeners with?
For me, it all comes down to this. What will Elon Musk's legacy be? Will he be remembered as a visionary who saved humanity, or as a reckless disruptor who caused more harm than good? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, he's a force of nature, and his story's far from over.
Well said. A lot to think about, that's for sure. We've explored his life, his work, the good, the bad, the controversies. Now it's your turn, listeners. What do you make of it all? What are your thoughts on Elon Musk?
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here, right?
Yeah.
From his childhood to those crazy business ventures, the personal life, the controversies. It seems like every time Elon does something amazing, there's also something, well, a little baffling. How do you even sum up a guy like this?
It's a real challenge, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, he's brilliant, he's impulsive, visionary one minute, reckless the next. Maybe that's the secret sauce, the thing that keeps us all so fascinated. He just doesn't fit into any neat little box.
He really doesn't. And it's to Isaacson's credit that he doesn't try to force him into one. He presents this really multi-dimensional portrait. This isn't just a puff piece, a hero-worshipping kind of biography.
Exactly, and that's so important, I think. We can acknowledge those achievements, be impressed by his sheer audacity, without ignoring those flaws, those questionable decisions. It's about seeing the whole picture, warts and all. So let's try to pull it all together. If someone's listening to this whole deep dive, what are the key takeaways, the things they should remember about Elon Musk?
Well, first and foremost, the guy operates on a different level. His drive, his ambition, that ability to imagine and then actually chase those impossible goals, it's remarkable. But we also have to remember that this drive, this intensity, it comes at a price, both for him and for the people around him.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't strike me as the easiest boss to work for, or the easiest guy to be in a relationship with, for that matter.
That's putting it mildly. There's a real pattern there, right?
Yeah.
That intensity, the need for control, not exactly Mr. Compromise. And it seems to show up everywhere. Work, personal life, the whole 9 yards.
So someone listening might be thinking, okay, sure, brilliant guy, but also maybe a bit of a jerk. How do we make sense of those two sides?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I honestly don't think there's an easy answer. We can celebrate his accomplishments, his impact on the world, and still acknowledge that, yeah, sometimes his methods are messed up. His version of progress sometimes hurts people. It's messy, it's complicated. That's the reality.
It's like that old saying, never meet your heroes. Except in this case, we're getting this incredibly close-up look at this guy, one of the most powerful and influential people on the planet. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Right. And that's what makes Isaacson's biography so fascinating. It's more than just a story about success. It's a window into what it means to be human. That drive to do great things, the ambition, and also the struggle with those flaws we all have, those things that hold us back. All right, so as we wrap this whole thing up, what's the one big question you want to leave our listeners with? The thing you want them to keep thinking about even after we're done here? Well, for me, it boils down to this. What will Elon Musk's legacy be? When all is said and done, will we remember him as a visionary who pushed humanity forward or as a reckless disruptor who left a trail of destruction? I don't have the answer. Only time will tell, I guess. But one thing's for sure, he's a force of nature. His story is far from over.
Well said. And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive into the world of Elon Musk. We've explored his life, his work, the triumphs, the failures, the controversies, all of it. Now it's your turn, listeners. What do you make of it all? What are your thoughts on this complicated, fascinating, and incredibly influential figure? Thanks for joining us.